Good day and welcome to the Strong Ambition Podcast. I'm your host, Rhyland, and I am here to dive into what makes people live a more ambitious life. And we're going to help you with the athletic training spectrum and your ambitions to be an athlete. So, this guest is very special to me because Jeff Wood was actually a huge inspiration to me when I first got into the strength and conditioning realm and I started Focus Fitness. I knew he started the brand. He started the brand before there was any other strength conditioning gyms really making a name for themselves in Winnipeg. And we talk about this on the episode. And I just remember thinking that this man was really just renowned for how big of an impact he could make on athletes. And so I thought, man, that's what I want. I want to be renowned for this, and I want to be so passionate and be an expert in this field. So having him on the podcast here is a great honor, and we get to hear his story, how he created his own brand. We dive into what athletes should really appreciate, what he's learning, and so I think this is a really great episode if you're really interested in training, especially in the athletic realm. So without further ado, here is Jeff Wood. Good day, Jeff. Thank you so much for spending your time. It's an honor to have you on. I just got to say, I'm a fanboy of yours. Is when I first got into, Focus Fitness, got into training, heard all about you, and you were a huge inspiration to me. So this is an honor for you to be on my show. So thank you so much. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, and looking forward to it. It's going to be good.
Yeah, we're gonna have some fun here. Okay, so like I said, I nerd out because, getting in the strength conditioning world in Winnipeg, you were very renowned for the impact you had on a lot of hockey training and stuff like that. So why don't you tell the audience about yourself? And I also love to hear how you even kind of get involved in your expertise, like how you grew up, influences that led you on the way, and then kind of got you to where you were.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in this game a long time now, almost 30 years. And growing up, I just loved sports. I loved playing the sports. We, as kids, we didn't have, access to internet or even a whole lot of TV stations or anything like that. So what we did on our free time was just go out and play sports and have fun. And that kind of, got me into doing some, playing sports fairly competitively. I wouldn't say I was elite by any stretch of the imagination, but played football, hockey, golf, a whole bunch of different sports. And when I got into high school, just kind of focused on football and hockey a little bit more. That kind of took me into playing a little bit of junior hockey and in Winnipeg. And then I was in university at University of Manitoba, taking phys ed and rec studies, and it just really kind of morphed out of there. Early on in my university career, I didn't really have a desire to teach in a school, so I kind of love the the anatomy, the physiology, and exercise physiology part of it, and took to that. And once I graduated from university, I started doing a little bit of volunteer work over at the YMCA. And my friend who graduated the year before happened to work there. And I lined up a part-time job there to start. And then that was in 1993, I guess, early 1993. And I ended up within probably about 9 months starting to work there full time. Did a variety of different things there. I ran the sports programs out of there for a few years, and then the strength and conditioning center and personal training programs out of the YMCA. And once I got, they made some changes at their CEO level, and that new individual decided that all the people that worked there needed to be able to teach aerobics and water aerobics and all those kinds of things. And I just really had no desire to do any of those things. I liked training athletes, and I liked I liked working in a fitness center, and that was what appealed to me. So that's when I went off on my own. It was 1997, and I started doing some personal training. All the personal training clients I had at the Y stopped doing personal training, so I just kept training them out at the Y and a few other gyms, and basically running around the city of Winnipeg doing personal training in different gyms and homes and things like that. It wasn't too long after that, my wife and I were expecting our first child, and so in 1998, I ended up buying a little personal training studio on Academy Road. It was called River City Fitness, and the year before that, when I kind of went off from the Y, I started a company called Focus Fitness and Conditioning, and then I just changed the name of the personal training center to Focus Fitness and Conditioning, and that's kind of how my personal training career morphed. And then, interestingly enough, about a year into that, most of the clients that we had were very committed to training in the fall and the winter, and then once summer rolled around, they were all gone to the lake. So I had to kind of search for some ways to generate some revenue and income. So I had a guy that I grew up playing hockey against. His name is Russ Romanuk. He was at the time part of the Winnipeg Jets organization, and he asked me to work with him. And he was really my first hockey player that I trained. And shortly after that, I started working with a bunch of younger kids, like 14, 15-year-old kids, over at Gateway Recreation Center. And that's kind of how I got my feet into the hockey world. These were AAA kids, and eventually they, my first group I trained for a couple of months, and there were 6 of them. And then for July and August after that, there were 12 of them. And then the next summer there were 24, and the next summer there were 48. And it just kind of kept growing. And it wasn't too long into that I hired a young guy out of university. His name's Glenn Carnegie, and Glenn was a great on ice guy. He really enthusiastic guy. So he helped a lot in helping build our hockey program, our off-season program, into what it was eventually. The space that we had on Academy was too small. We also had some space at Gateway, and we ended up finding some space over at the Winnipeg Winter Club, and that's really where our program started to grow and develop. We had 2,500 square feet there, but we also had access to the rink at the Winter Club, which was ideal, and we had access to the tennis courts outside, and so we actually had much more space than 2,500 square feet, and we were able to train. In a given summer, we were training upwards of 100 hockey players of different levels, from peewee age up into the pros. So we had a good chunk of NHL players and AHL players that we trained out of there, and it was kind of neat to see how it really grew. We basically, like I said, doubled every summer for probably 4 or 5 summers, and we're able to take on some really committed and excellent athletes, but they ended up becoming professional athletes too, which is kind of neat. And we were in the Winter Club for 4 or 5 years, I think, and then they were looking to do some different things in their space, so they needed us to get out of there, and we looked for some other space and happened to find some warehouse space basically right across the street on Stradbrook, and which was ideal for us to have that rink right there. And then when we did that, we actually, after doing a little bit of research, looked into a company down in the States called Total Hockey. And that led us to making a trip down to Minneapolis to go look at it. And we ended up buying a franchise, which is basically an indoor hockey skills training center. Had some really cool things, scan cards to record times and speeds and things like that, and shooting accuracy. It was kind of pretty cool center that we ended up creating there. So we had a pretty good size facility. We're around a little over 10,000 square feet of space, and half of that was Total Hockey and the other half was Focus Fitness, and everything fit pretty well there. So it was kind of an interesting time for us. Like when we took on the Total Hockey stuff, we actually a guy that I trained for a long time, JP Vijay, who's pretty well known in these parts nowadays as a skills coach and does a lot of camps and things like that. JP jumped on board, a few years before that. Glenn became my partner, and then when we got into Total Hockey, JP also did, and then we were out there for a couple years, and that was just shortly before the Jets came to town, and True North was building the Iceplex out Point West Auto Park area there, and it was a really good fit for us, and they ended up buying Focus Fitness, and then we moved everything over there and worked there for a couple of years before we parted ways and moved on to some other things. So that's kind of the last 10. It's been about, I guess, 10 years, 12 years, I guess. Kind of again morphed again when True North and I parted ways there. It was I took a little bit of time to reflect. Looking back, I was probably a little bit burnt out and needed a refresh, and so I took the summer off, just kind of relaxed, and the only training I did was with my son and a few of his buddies, and then just kind of took it easy and tried to decide, what the next steps were for me. And I always loved training athletes and working with them, and didn't really see a need for me to change that too much. Started getting some calls from people that I trained previously, and just kind of started growing another business. So that business is called the Athletes Academy, and I've had that since then. And it's been an interesting journey. Right now, I work at Sport Manitoba. I've worked here for 5 years, and doing working in the performance center now as the performance manager, and I get to work with athletes and our staff and volunteers and things like that, and help them learn and grow. And I get to do that at the same time. Keeps me young, I think. So.
Absolutely. Well, that is an incredible kind of career when you really think about it. I really, that's why, again, I'm such a huge fan of your story and have so much respect for it, because, just even hearing your story about running around, when you were at the Y at someone else's house, like, I think probably 95% of personal trainers go through that, where, I'll meet you there. I'll meet you there. I'll do this. I'll do that.
For sure.
And then you, hopefully you can gather enough of the right people to meet you at one spot, so you don't got to drive as much. And then you have a whole nother beast behind you, which is you got to run a business if you want to make substantial money. Otherwise, you're owned by a business and you're not going to make substantial money. And so it's just the one thing they can't prepare you for in university. Well, I think they give you like one agribiz course is what I took. It's like, yeah, just understand that balance sheets are a thing and that's it. And so you really don't get prepared for the real life. I'm really curious from your perspective too, because, this story is great because you had to overcome so many things. Growing up, just being, I think, an athlete, being someone who naturally challenged themselves was, so naturally you're going to just want to push. Like it's hard to be a trainer and not try to be inspirational intuitively, right? Because you're trying to push people and that's a part of you. I was curious if you had any other kind of influences growing up that put you in that headspace that made you a more ambitious person.
Well, I think, for me, like my parents, obviously big influence on me, and my dad was always a real hardworking guy and really put some work ethic into us kids, and we learned a lot from him about hard work and how that can get you somewhere. And the other things, like with my mom, she didn't really like sports, and so she watched us play. But I think her influence was a little bit more on well, for me anyways, it was on the spiritual side of things, like where she made it an important part of our lives to go to church and to make sure that from an integrity standpoint that we did things the right way and lived life the right way, and we were honest and all those different things, and so those two things together, for me anyways, like they were huge influences on who I am and how I do things. And aside from that, there's always a teacher, there's always a coach that kind of helps you see who you are and how you can become better. And I had some of those growing up. I had lots of coaches that were terrible coaches, and I think you learn from that too, and for me, the good coaches are the ones that, pushed me and pushed my buttons the right way to make me perform better. And the ones that didn't really, were more negative to me, I learned from that too. And I think that as a coach, for me anyways, like I want to make sure the people I work with, whether they're the athletes or our staff or whoever it is, that they know that I care about them and I respect them, and it's more about building that relationship with those athletes. And I mean, just as a matter of fact, like 2-3 weeks ago, I was at a former hockey player's wedding, who actually, I trained him when he was 15, 16, 17 years old. And he helps me out with some of our summer hockey programs and stuff on the ice. And so I've been to multiple weddings, seen these guys have kids and families and kind of, when I was training them, they were kind of like my kids, and now they're my friends, and I get to chat with them pretty regularly, and maybe not see them as much because they've all spread out all over North America, but still get to check in and chat with them a little bit, and that's important to me. I think it's you got to get to know the clients and athletes and people you work with, and it kind of makes it enjoyable to come to work every day knowing that you've influenced somebody in some way, and hopefully in a positive way, and help them grow and develop, and that's kind of why I do it. I mean, could have packed things up 12 years ago and changed careers. And I really didn't want to do that. I really loved doing what I do. And it took me a little bit of a break to figure that out. But at the same time, I wouldn't change it for the world. It's been great for me. And my influences, like even right now, I have people that I consider mentors that are younger than me, that I continue to learn from. And I think that that's a big factor for me. I don't ever want to stop learning about training and physiology and anatomy and all those things. I think it's important for what we do to understand those things. But the other side of that too is it's important. I can't say I'm the best communicator in the world, and I certainly have my faults, and I definitely know I'm not the best businessman in the world. Trust me, that's my number crunching abilities are not very good. But I was able to build a business based on relationships, and that's I might not be the best numbers guy, but I can figure out, I know how to talk to kids and help them get where they want to go. And that was, that's been the biggest thing for me. I think that that's why I come to work every day, that I get to, yeah. So.
No, it's funny too, because we like to be called strength coaches to not be messed around with personal trainers, but at the end of the day, it's all being personal, and you really hit home on something. It didn't even dawn on me until I was talking to my boxing coach actually on the podcast, and he had said that your coach is as influential as a parent. And I was like, whoa, yeah. Like, and he has been that influential on me. All of my good bosses, like AJ was my boss, and great mentors shape you. And it actually made me a better coach once I stepped into that role. I'm like, you know what? If I could influence this person, more than it's my job, I'm going to do a better job. And like you said, you enjoy it, you take passion with it. You're not even worried about being paid. You're just worried about showing up for them. And it makes you so much more part of the process. And like you say, you even appreciate your mentors when they're doing that for you. And the other thing I actually want to address that people really need to appreciate if they don't know that much about focus fitness is that focus, and you can correct me if I'm roughly right or wrong on this, focus was kind of the initial business brand, or your business was the first one to foster hockey players to that extent, right? And so you built up this wonderful system that actually it's a perfect environment for it in Winnipeg, Manitoba, a lot of hockey players, and then created to add to that, created an atmosphere. You didn't just create athletes, you had this group dynamic. When you're in focus fitness, when you're in that group dynamic with the guys you grow up with, you might play against, but you're all competitively supporting each other. And it was a beautiful thing. And so would you say that's fair that focus was one of the initial brands in Winnipeg actually fostering this?
I would say so. I know that at the time when I started working with these hockey kids, there was myself and Jeff Fisher at Elite Performance, and basically we were the two. And shortly after that, Richard Burr started doing some things, and then Scott Miller, and so we were early on kind of the guys that hockey players were going to, and. I think the group thing for us was just great. Those athletes were all competitive anyways. So when we added competition to the training sessions, it just made it that much better. And so, things morph over time, obviously, but we always tried to keep that group atmosphere, just because those guys drove the bus. We could give them the drills and the exercises and all that stuff, and that was fine. But when they started, when we got into little competitions and races and things like that, they just went and they worked super hard, and it made them all better. And we didn't have to motivate too much. We just needed to start the competition, and then it went, right. It was pretty fun. Like we did a lot of cool things with those guys back then. Like we would go to, well, typically Wednesdays for us, like were conditioning days. So we would go out to Birds Hill Park. We'd take barbells and plates, and we would just go out there and have a lot of fun, but work real hard, and we'd finish things off with a swim in the lake, and we would go to Spring Hill and run sprints up that hill, which if you've ever tried to do that is super hard. Like we would run sprints, go out there and run sprints, and I think the fastest time I ever saw was 32 seconds straight uphill. And, most people were doing it in like 45 to 60 seconds, and it was a grind. And so we would just try to be real creative on those days, and bring out the competition and make sure the guys were working. Like we'd have competitions with scores, and we do a variety of different things just to keep that energy level up the whole time and get those athletes pushing each other. And it was, those days were the best.
Absolutely. No, it's a beautiful environment. And I do want to kind of dive into this kind of topic of exercise science itself. Like I said, I wanted to nerd out with you on this stuff. So, just on that topic. So one thing that's really challenging for people is to appreciate what that whole design is about. So many athletes, and, your expertise is a lot within, preparing hockey players, but there's all kinds of athletes I'm certain you've worked with. And what people don't appreciate, like that's essentially like you have a day once a week, and that is a taxing system, but just the right amount for a very specific intent. And a lot of the time you even get big rests between these bouts of really high intensity activity. What are some like things that people should appreciate and understand about what conditioning is in comparison to what people would say cardio is?
Right. So conditioning, to me anyways, if you look at the sport you're playing or coaching, you have to look at it from the standpoint of how. So for example, in hockey, how long are the shifts, average shift? And then how many shifts do you have in a game? And then how many games do you have in a week? And then when you break it down into those kind of workable numbers, and even breaking down a shift even further. So within a shift, let's say a 45-second shift, you might stand around for, just kind of coast for 10 to 12 seconds. And then, or in this case, let's just say it's 5 seconds. And then you're going to burst to a corner to try and steal a puck, and then get into a battle, and then get the puck. And then you might pass it and then coast and find open space. And so within that 45 seconds of work, you might actually only do 12 seconds of really intense full out effort or less, right? And so when you're planning out your training and the conditioning specifically, you have to address those things. Can you go full out for 6 seconds or 8 seconds or whatever it is, and then coast for a bit and then go hard again, and then coast for a bit and go hard again? And then can you repeat that 20 times like you would in a game? And you have to build up that resilience and tolerance to that workload. Right. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do cardio and do, long duration, low intensity cardio. You need a foundation and a base to get better at that more anaerobic type conditioning that hockey or basketball or sports like that or volleyball are more like, right? So that's kind of the exercise physiology geeky part of it, is that you not only do you need to analyze movement and get into biomechanics, but the actual physiology of it is you analyze the sport and the different aspects of it and the different movements, and you try to build a program around that, but it has to also have a logical progression to it. So early on in our summer, if we did a 4-month off-season program, like May was oftentimes just building up that aerobic base. We'd go for jogs. We'd do a variety of different things with the athletes. Could be on the bike, could be going outside, could be on a treadmill. But we would build a base and a foundation. And at the same time, we also want to develop speed and quickness. So it's not just, okay, we're going to do a 1-hour run today and that's all we're doing. It's, okay, we're going to go through our warm up. We're going to do an athletic skill of some sort. Could be quickness or agility, could be linear speed, could be plyometrics. And early on, it's going to be lower level, lower intensity versions of those things. But that's how we start. And then we're going to do some strength training and whatnot. And then we're going to finish with some conditioning, unless it's a conditioning day. And then we're going to do that same kind of thing, but we're going to go from the higher quality movements early on, and the things that require, basically more intensity. And we're going to do those early in the training session. And then as we go through the training session and get a little bit more fatigued, then we're going to do some of the grunt work, which is going to be, you're doing shuttle runs and doing things like that help, again, build that aerobic base, or doing some aerobic power type work and things like that. So within different training sessions, we're going to have different focuses, but the idea was always around, early on, we build a base and a foundation. We do that with muscular endurance. We do that with aerobic endurance. We dabble in some of the anaerobic things just to make sure that we have athletic skill and ability. And then as we get going through the summer, closer to training camp, it's more about the anaerobic power and capacity and that explosive speed and quickness and those types of things. But we want to have that progression to the end, because we want people to be healthy at the same time, right? We don't want to injure them through training. We want to build up that resiliency early on, and then have it carry them through right into their season. So for us, it was always, conditioning was an important part of it, but it was a total package. We wanted them to be good athletes, and you would know as well, just from, like, we saw a ton of hockey players that were terrible runners. They couldn't run. They couldn't play other sports. All they knew was hockey. And those were the athletes that, they could go get to junior or something like that, but they could never get much higher because they weren't athletic. And we needed to develop that athleticism in them so they could basically compete at a higher level. And the best athletes we trained, as it turned out, for the most part, were the ones that ended up going to play in the NHL and be those professionals, because they could play multiple sports. They had the ability to do that. And then hockey was just the sport they were best at. And they chose that, and they were excellent at it. You look at a guy like Jonathan Taves, who was very athletic, could play soccer, could play a bunch of different sports, just a, hard-working, great hockey player. Travis Zajac, probably one of the best athletes we ever trained. Like, the guy could move. He could jump. He was explosive. He had all those athletic tools. And he just recently retired a year ago, and and had a 15, 16-year NHL career, right? Like, just those athletic guys are the ones that last the longest, because their bodies know how to move the right way and all that kind of thing. It's been a real neat experience to have worked with athletes like that. I mean, we can't take any credit for where they are, maybe a little bit, but but they were great athletes and they were good players, and our environment helped drive them a little bit, and make them, compete a little harder. Maybe that helped them, but for the most part, I mean, they were likely gonna go there anyways, right? And I'm not the kind of guy that's going to go out and say, hey, I trained Travis Zajac and Jonathan Taves, and that's the reason they're in the NHL. No, absolutely not. Like, those guys were great athletes, and they were going to play in the NHL anyways. We just had a ton of fun training those guys. And, I was talking actually with Travis's brother, Darcy, at that wedding a couple weeks ago, and he says, he's training hockey players out in Vancouver, and he said, yeah, I do a lot of the same stuff we used to do back in the day because that stuff was so good, and you guys were way ahead of your time, and we're like, well, we just did the right things, and we treated those kids like they were kind of our kids, and and we grew up with them a little bit, like, obviously I'm old, I'm 52, but 20 some years ago when they were coming up, it was, they were 15, 16-year-old kids, and, I was 30, I had two little kids, and trying to do that and run a business at the same time. But, my kids know those guys, right? And it's kind of neat, we've been to some Stanley Cup parties, and, Jonathan Taves is saying, running up to my little guy at the time, Jordy, and it's like, Jordy, hey, come on over here. And, at his own Stanley Cup party, it's kind of neat, right? So my kids are a little spoiled that way. They know some NHL guys, and have got to meet them and hang out with them a little bit, which is pretty cool. So.
And you just get to appreciate what training really does at that high caliber. Like, it's not going to, you can try to push someone's genetics as far as it goes, right? And you have that privilege. And, getting, like you said, when you have athleticism within a person, I don't think a lot of people appreciate, and I didn't appreciate it until I was that focused. And it still took me probably 5-6 years before I started really listening to AJ and appreciate that, like, you're just a human body that needs to move better. It's not like you have to, like, on the ice, you better learn how to move like a hockey player better, but not in the gym. In the gym, you're going to move better as a human, which will transfer over to the other things. So, when you're doing, like you described it really well, and you're saying you got to have these kind of base movements of athleticism and kind of evolve that. And like you say, you have a spectrum that you need to work, even for conditioning, for strength, and everything. One of the most humbling moments I had was when I first started there, and I was just, the cleanup guy at the end of the day, and I looked into, I think, one of the NHLers program, and I was like, oh man, this is going to be fascinating. And it was a fundamental squat, hinge, push, pull. It was just the fundamental movements. I'm like, this is the same shit we give the kids. Oh, because we're just humans. We're all just humans that need to do this stuff. So what I love, if you could describe this kind of like, and go any direction with this, because that's probably the biggest misconception I think people have with training for athletes, and being an athlete that wants to train is like, what are the biggest misconceptions to you that athletes should try to be aware of in order to improve their performance?
Yeah, this is interesting because, we always used to, when we, let's call it marketing, but I wouldn't really call it marketing, but we would, the big kind of catchwords were always like sports specific and hockey specific and all this stuff, right? And at the end of the day, what we really did was we did the basics really well. We taught athletes how to move really well, and we gave them variety in what they did, and we progressed it along the way. So it wasn't, people will look at it and go, well, they train a lot of hockey players, so they just do hockey. Like, and until I came to Sport Manitoba, like, everybody's like, oh, you're a hockey guy. I'm like, yeah, I'm a hockey guy, but I like training athletes. And that's one thing about where I'm at now, is that in any given day, I can see hockey players, ringette players, archers, boxers, and any sport in between that, rowers, you name it. We've got all of them that come here. And, it's interesting to watch them move. So, for example, we had some swimmers in here last summer, and I was watching them go through their warm-ups, and like, these kids don't know how to move. Like they can't cross over. They can't shuffle. They can't do these really basic fundamental movements that everybody should be able to do. And I'm like, that's terrible. Like these kids are university swimmers and they don't know how to move. And okay, their sport is a certain way, and I get that. But at the same time, like, what happens when you're done that sport and you're going to just, all of a sudden you're changing it up and you're going to do CrossFit, or you're going to change sports and play ultimate or whatever. You can't do those basic movements. You're going to be in big trouble, and so, the whole sport specific thing, people use that in their marketing, but if they're actually doing sport specific training for their athletes when they're 12, 11, 13, whatever age they are, they're missing the boat. Like that's just not the way you develop athletes. It's just, we spend as much time in our training sessions here working on, our proper warm-ups and athletic skills than we do on strength and conditioning, because we train teenagers here, like aside from a few pros and whatever college athletes we train, the bulk of our athletes here are teenagers, and they need to learn how to move and be athletic. And if they do that, then whatever sport they choose down the road to play, they're going to be able to do it at a pretty good level, just based on being more athletic and building a good base and foundation. And we just keep it real simple, and there's nothing complicated about it. And the whole, realm of sports specificity, you can have a baseball player and a hockey player and a rower do almost the exact same training session, and they'll all get benefit from it, and if they know how to squat and lunge and hinge and push and pull and brace and rotate, those are the main things that they need to be able to do. And then the athletic skill part of it is, we need to teach them those fundamental movement patterns so they can actually be athletic. And if they can do that, then, they're going to get closer to reaching their genetic potential than just training in a sport specific way. Always training like a hockey player, being in a hip flexed, abducted, blah, 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 all those different things. Like those things put as much strain on your body, or more strain on your body. And if you do it repeatedly over and over again, and you don't balance it out with other movements and mobility and different things like that, you're just going to be injured all the time. So it's really one of those things that I learned early on. Like, I've gone out to, when I was, starting out, gone out to Vancouver, and my buddy who worked at the Y with me, he ended up going out there and working with Peter Twist. I went out there for a week and I volunteered to work at Peter Twist camp. He trained a bunch of NHL guys. I watched what they were doing. I'm like, yeah, this is pretty cool, but they're doing, like, to me, technically, from a strength and conditioning perspective, nothing was pretty. Like it wasn't really well done technically, but they were good athletes. They moved well. They taught them how to move well. I'm not an Olympic lifting coach, but I watch these guys do Olympic lifts and like, this is terrible looking. But I went up to, like, I'd go up to Pete and say, well, do you care how they do that? And he goes, no, I just want them to do it fast and be explosive. I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. Then if you don't care about that technical part in that particular exercise, I mean, don't get me wrong, like Pete's a legend. So he's like one of the best ever and training hockey players. So I'm not, dissing him at all. He's fantastic. And he's built a great business. At that point in my career, I was like, okay, well, I'm more into, I want to do things the right way. I want athletes to do things the right way. And I'm going to stick to my guns on that and make sure that's what the foundation of our program is, whether it's, 20 years ago or today. Like, I do some different things now. I probably do things, I'm probably more simple now than I was 20 years ago. Like we just try and keep things really basic, do the right things, do them the right way. And let's teach them how to move, and they're going to benefit from it.
The simplicity is so important for a sport athlete that has so much more other things to learn. And commonly, you just nailed it with you can see with a sport like swimming, they're just not used to gravity, right? So they're already going to move very terribly. But, I love that you mentioned boxers, because boxers have boxing athleticism. They don't have fundamental athleticism. So like you talked about the crossovers when I was trying to run some dry lens, and I was like, whoa, you don't know how to do a crossover. I'm like, I didn't think that this would be a teachable skill, but it is. And then how do you you got to do a side shuffle. Their hands have to be up by their face. I'm like, no. You're just a human moving right now. Just be an athlete. And, I'm so used to seeing like football players. Football is like the one sport where, everything that you do in the gym is going to transfer over. So all of them are very, very, very athletic on all those fundamental skills. But when you have, sports like hockey and boxing and like you said, swimming, like have a specificity to the skill. The main thing you had already mentioned is like the problem is the imbalance, and the sport specificity in the training is let's prevent your injury. Do more of the opposite of what you're doing. So you're a boxer, stop doing push-ups for a little bit unless you're doing a stability push-up. Let's do more rows, right? Like that's what people need to appreciate about athleticism is your sport's going to make you good. Certainly if we get your squat, like when your squat pattern is stronger, everything you're doing with your legs that's close to squat pattern is going to be stronger, right? It's kind of the hierarchy of movements you're going to associate with the other things. But I love how you came back to I'm just coming to simplicity. I do the same thing. Like you talk about cleans. Well, cleans is a skill. Like unless you're going to be an Olympic athlete or you can be one-on-one with them constantly and you think they're going to get that athleticism, why don't we just do some trap bar deadlifts and some kettlebell swings and get a lot of the same movement pattern advantage from that? And it's less complicated, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like we'll teach athletes how to do cleans and those are fine, but what's the purpose? Like if they're not going to be Olympic lifting athletes, then you can teach them how to do that the right way. And there's some carryover in different sports. Football's a good example, or even rowing's a good example of that extension, right? But that to me is more of a high pull or a hang pull, and you can do a trap bar jump squat and accomplish virtually the same thing without any technical knowledge needed, right? So those are things that you can. It's about producing force quickly, and you can do that without having to think too much. And when you get into cleans, you got to think a little bit. You got to be technically sound and those types of things. We still teach them. I still think it's a good exercise to teach, but we do it over time. If you can't front squat, we're not cleaning. If you can't, if you can't deadlift, you're not cleaning. Like we need to teach those things first. And then once we get those, then the other little parts in between we can do in warm-ups. We can do things like that. Some people pick it up quick and some don't. But it's not the foundation of what we do. It's a part of what we do. And if we have athletes that are going to college, reality, especially in the States, if you're going to college, you need to know how to clean. So we got to teach you how to clean before you go there. They're going to go, what's your strength coach doing there? Like, is he an idiot? How come you don't know how to clean? So for those athletes specifically, we definitely work on cleans and help develop that. For the younger athletes, we can accomplish a lot of those same things by doing, plyometrics and doing loaded jumps and things like that that don't require as much skill.
Totally. No, and that makes sense. Again, you have a very specific need for it, even just simply if you're going through a training system. But when someone says, "Oh, I need to clean," and they're just thinking they need to, that's where it can be, a little contextual. But I totally appreciate that path. One other question I had is, like, as you said, like, I'm coming to more simplicity. Is I'm curious about what, like, because you're always a guy very much with the research and the learning new things, So I'm curious, this guy's been in the industry for 30 years. What has been pretty cool new information that you've come across in strength conditioning that's kind of impressed you?
Well, I think that, like, for me over the last little while, we've been kind of looking at like more velocity based training things. So we have some gym awares here, our Tendo units. So we use those to help athletes understand that you can use a bar or some type of load and move it quickly. And I think a lot of people are always like, especially when you get into more of the fitness world, it's like everything's got to be slow, everything's got to be controlled when it comes to strength training. That's not the case, and it's really, there's a time and a place. I think some neat things, like if you do look into Cal Dietz and the triphasic training method, he's got some real cool stuff, and it all makes a lot of sense, right? You've got basically your three phases of your lifting movement, right? Your eccentric, your isometric, your concentric, and you train those at different times, and then you blend them together to create, strong, powerful athletes. And so that's influenced me quite a bit. And there's a couple other things. And a few years back, I went to a functional range conditioning certification course. So if you look into Dr. Andrea Ospina functional anatomy seminars, he's developed that program. And to me, that kind of changed some things for me in terms of joint health and how to make your joints not only mobile but strong, right? So flexible but strong at the same time, and at end ranges of motion. So there's some real cool stuff that they have in that certification. They've got a variety of different ones for clinicians and things like that. But for me, especially when we work with hockey players and sports with different rotational component and lateral component, there's some really cool exercises you can do to help develop that end range strength and mobility. So that was something that really opened my eyes. It's probably about 4 years ago or so I did that, and there's some real neat exercises that are super simple looking, but they're killers. They're absolute killers. And so I kind of try to pay attention to, in terms of what's new and exciting. I always come back to the basics and make sure that when I'm reading on something or I'm watching videos of different strength coaches, that I make sure it makes sense for what we do. And one thing over the last couple of years, because it was from my own kind of injury, I had some patellar tendonitis and stuff. I did a kind of a deep dive into isometric training. And there's some really kind of cool stuff out there on isometric training. If you look at, again, Cal Dietz and Chris Corfist, and there's Alex Natera, who's got some real cool stuff. And he does more like running, sprinting based isometrics. He does some really neat stuff. So we've incorporated a lot of that into what we do here, just because I found that my knees in particular, feel a whole lot better right now, 2 years into really, really studying it and focusing on it. And the research is kind of a guy from Canada, Dr. Keith Barr. He actually works at the University of California, Berkeley, I think, or one of those University of California campuses, and he's got some real neat research out on isometric training and the benefits of that on tendon health and things like that. So he's really worth looking into. He's done a bunch of different podcasts, so you can go on like Simply Faster and things like that. He's been on a bunch of podcasts. He's got some real cool stuff out there, and it's basic, right? Just, can you get into a split squat? Can you hold it? Can you hold it for 30 seconds times 4 sets, 2 minutes of work? Can you do that multiple times a day? And he's actually got some nutritional components to that as well. So collagen supplementation with vitamin C an hour before. So it helps kind of with that tendon health and growth by doing that. So there's a variety of different things that I've picked up over the years that I always kind of try to grow and develop as I'm getting older here, and I want to also make sure that I'm healthy myself, right? And it's hard, as you would know, it's hard to run a business and be eyeballs deep in that and train athletes and stay in good shape, right? I can tell you for the better part of probably 15 years, I was not in great shape. I might have been in good shape, but I was not in great shape. And I'm probably in better shape now than I was 20 years ago, and maybe even 30 years ago. And that's just because I needed to get myself healthy, get my joints feeling better, and be able to move and show athletes how to move. And I can't do that if I'm, 15 pounds heavier, 20 pounds heavier, whatever it is. So in that sense, COVID was really good to me. I really picked up some good habits over that, and changed a few things, nothing crazy, but changed a few things, focused on my conditioning a little bit more and my nutrition a lot more, and feel a whole lot better now than I did, a few years ago. So, and part of that was just me learning more about, my joints and how to keep them healthy, and my tendons, things like that. And it just kind of morphed from there and turned into kind of leaning out, getting in better shape. So,
well, I think, no, that's great. All those are great. I'm going to be listening to this after, writing these all out. And I love that you said functional range conditioning, because I was like, I've been looking at the course for a while, and now I'm like, I'm definitely getting it. Jeff Wood's told me to. So, and then I also want to give you a little bit more credit than you're giving yourself, because even from like when I first saw you at Focus, you were doing a single arm farmer carry with a barbell with a plate on each side. So you were carrying 135 pounds single armed across the gym. And I still remember doing that as a workout when I was like 20, 21. And I'm like, this is fucking hard. But Jeff's in his 40s and he's doing it like it ain't no thing. And to this day, I always make sure I never put on anything other than 45s because of that day. And so even back in the day, you're more than holding your own. So knowing that you're even in better shape is super inspirational. But I know I'm taking up a lot of
just old man strength, right?
Old man strength. Well, that's the hardest. I know. But I know I've taken up a lot of your time here. So what I'd love to just end off with is, why don't you tell the listeners, first off, what is your most recent ambition? What are you really excited about? And why don't you tell them where they can find more about you if you want to plug some of your info?
Yeah, most recent, again, I'll go back to my own kind of body change or transformation over the last couple of years. I for a long time, I thought it was good to be strong and obviously powerful and those types of things, but I didn't really appreciate, how being a little leaner can make you feel a whole lot better and make you move a whole lot better. And so I've kind of taken the last 4 or 5 years, and more specifically the last 2 years, of really focusing on being very intentful of my time to train myself, to focus on my meal preps and all those different things, to make sure that I'm healthy. So I want to, my kids don't have kids yet, but when they do have kids, I want to coach my grandkids, and I want to go skiing with my grandkids and play sports with them, and be able to move with them. And and that might not be, for 10 years, and that's fine. But I want to, for me, I want to be healthy, and I want to move well, and I want to make sure that I'm able to, hang out with my grandkids when they're little, and see them when they're 20 and getting married, right? Like I want to 25, whatever it is. I want to live a long time, and I want to be able to move that whole time. I don't want to be sitting around in pain all the time. So just that is probably my biggest thing over the last couple of years, is just more focusing on, me being healthy and staying healthy. I still feel like I'm decently strong, and I keep working on that. But my conditioning is substantially better, and I feel a whole lot better because of it. So that's one thing. And then, in terms of, getting a hold of me, I'm at Sport Manitoba in the Performance Center. My email address is jeff.wood@sportmanitoba.ca, and our website is sportmanitoba.ca, and then you search up performance, and you can find the things that we do on there.
We're going to pick, I'm going to recommend any athlete to come see you. As I said, you're kind of, again, someone I really admire for all the great work that you've done. You've been in industry a long time, and still you can clearly hear so passionate about everything you do, which is the key integral thing of being a good trainer, is to always want to be better at what you do. And that's what's going to help you make other people better at what they do, right? So thank you again, Jeff. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Happy to do it.
Thank you so much to Jeff Wood. I appreciate it so much. As I said, it's a great honor to have him on the podcast. And we even ran later than I intended, but he had so much great stuff to say. I could have kept asking him questions for another 2 hours easily. And so I'm definitely having him on the podcast again in the future. Some really helpful knowledge there for athletes. So I always appreciate it. If you haven't listened to my other podcasts with other strength coaches, we come back to simplicity. We come back to fundamental movement patterns. And that's what you need to pay attention to as an athlete. The really cool stuff is his new education pieces. We talked even off camera about triphasic training. We talked about other schools of thought, but I know I'm going to go on the path. If Jeff Woods, who's been in this for 30 years, has been taking functional brain conditioning, I'm going to go take it without a doubt. And so I love having him on that for that reason. And also just, again, I talked about it on the episode, but to appreciate that someone who is in the industry this long and has found their way and has always, found their way to help others, wants to be the best version of himself. And that's what makes him so effective, right? And I hope that's something for you to really look at, whether you're trying to be an athlete, but just wanting to be the best version of yourself, the best trainer, whatever your profession is, that is going to yield that passion and that ability to want to move forward. And you can hear it within him when he's just so fascinated with movement and training, and he always just found his way back to it. It's super inspirational. And like I say, I have all the respect in the world for Jeff, and super excited to have him on again. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to like, subscribe, and share, and all that good stuff. Especially share it with any athlete, any hockey athlete, but any athlete in general. As we said, we don't have to treat them that much different. They just need the fundamental training and not too much of it. And so I hope you yourself learned a lot here. And with that whole saying about ambition, chasing the passion, I'm going to leave off with this. life is not about the pursuit of happiness. It's about the happiness within the pursuit. So I'll catch you next time.